Okay, this video I decided to make because I've been seeing some videos recently on YouTube where it's sort of middle-aged men talking about issues, challenges, problems that they've got, that they're dealing with. Some of them are a little bit moany. Some of them are people trying to build a community of people asking for help, talking about the problems that they've got and seeing whether anybody else has dealt with the same problems or has got any insight. They're just coming up more and more on my YouTube feed, probably because I'm a middle-aged man. I'm 49 now, obviously 50 next year, probably a bit more than middle-aged, depending on how long I make it. So what I wanted to do is make some videos, but with a more positive slant than some of the ones that I've seen. And we can talk about, the problems, the issues, the problems, the challenges that we're facing. But what I definitely want there to be is some practical pathway out of the problems. And being the age I'm at now, I feel there's probably enough life experience there that I can comment on some of the issues. I don't want to be, I'm just looking at I'm going to be referring to my list of things to talk about. One of the things I've got here is to just make sure that I mention that I'm not looking to preach to anyone about anything, about how people should live their lives. All I want is to explain some of the ways that I've dealt with some of the problems that I've had that are similar, I know, to the problems that some of you are experiencing, and see if the methods that I used will work for you. Some of them will, some of them won't. So I'll be talking about in this channel all sorts of the things that affect middle-aged men. But I also want to talk about, I also want to talk to people younger as well. It's no good me addressing middle-aged men only, because I'm only middle-aged myself. What do I know? I want to talk to people that are sort of 30s, 40s, because that's when things really started to click with me, and I built up enough experience within those 2 decades that I'm proud of, and that I think I can pass some of that on. All the way up to 30, life was a mess. I'm not saying I haven't got any insights to share about that, that's who I'm speaking to, really. Maybe people that are struggling with typical middle-aged men problems. So money is what we're going to be talking about, health, mindset problems, the challenges that we face in middle-aged. I've also got some insights around marriage and how to raise kids, that sort of thing. So that's the idea. And what sparked me to think of doing this? Well, actually, I've been thinking about it for a while, but I was watching a video earlier on today about a chap who, I think he was the same age as me. He was 39. I'll put a link actually to that video in the description of this video, and so you'll see basically what he said was he's in a job and he's getting spoken to like shit. So I'm going to try not to swear in these videos. He's being treated badly, and he was kind of like, why do people think that they can get away with it? Well, it's because they know that you can't leave that job. You're stuck there. Like, a term for it is being a wage slave, isn't it? Some employers will exploit the fact that they know that you can't actually leave that job because you are so dependent on it. And so therefore they can start to take advantage, start to disrespect you. And he was talking about that basically. And I thought, right, well, I've been in that situation loads of times. And that's what I want to make the first video on this channel about, really, is dealing with that type of situation. Because I think when it comes to men's health and men's mental health and that sort of thing, especially in our age group, work and work related issues, I don't have any data or anything, but I think work related issues account for a lot of the problems. I'm not saying it's all of it, obviously. There's divorce, there's custody things, money, relationships, loneliness, all that sort of thing. And I'll cover all of those, I think, eventually. But I'll start here with this situation. You're stuck in a job and you are being disrespected, or the job is not paying you enough, or you're being taken advantage of in some way. So it's like what it does is you end up with, you don't feel secure. You don't feel secure in your job, and you don't feel secure in terms of being a provider for your family. And because you think you have a feeling that it could be taken away from you at any time. Fear mongering. I know managers like to do that quite a bit. That's what I've experienced. They know that there's some fear and anxiety and trepidation about employment status. Yeah, and some people out there, some managers out there will actively use that anxiety and fear to get you to do things and keep you on the back foot. Lack of security, lack of self-respect, causing anxiety, possibly exploitation. Like I said, that's when employers basically know the situation that you're in and then use that to their advantage to try and control you. Low pay, unpaid overtime, working conditions, verbal abuse, maybe even physical abuse, disrespect, blame and fear mongering. The low pay thing, that can occur. I'll give you an example, because you might be thinking, well, you took the job at the advertised salary, what's the problem? Well, what can happen, this is one of the issues that I dealt with, or I didn't actually deal with it, it just, one of those things that happened, is that we were working for a company that lost a contract, basically. And so that company was out, and then it was going to go back over to local authority management. And then all the staff were transferred over. It's called TUPE, T-U-P-E. Some of you, I know, will be familiar with that and will have gone through it. Transfer under the protection of employment. So we're transferred from the company that had the contract to the local authority. But the local authority paid their staff more for doing the same job. So surely you would think that when you transfer over, might be a naive thing to think, but you would naively think that you transfer over and then you end up being put on the same salary as the people that were already working for the local authority. No, you end up you transfer in under all of your terms and conditions that you were under with the company that lost the contract. So even if it's lower pay, you transfer with that lower pay. That sort of thing can start to really bug you after a while. Initially, you might sort of think, well, at least I've still got a job. But, as the days go by and you realise you're doing the same job as other people in the company for far less money, that could start to be a problem. That's just an example anyway. So what to do about it? Well, one of the things that might work, this is what I ended up doing, is, have you heard of the term FU money? So I don't want to swear. So FU money, the idea is, if you've never heard of it, is that you've got enough money, enough of a cushion, so that you can turn around to your boss and utter those words, FU, and then do one. Basically, you leave, and you've got the confidence, you've got the security to do that. Well, not many people are in that position. I would say almost nobody, no normal people really are in that position. It's kind of, there's been times in my life, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate, where you know that you are 1 month away from missing a rental payment, on your flat or your house or whatever, and that's it. That's it. You're going to be evicted or whatever. There's no cushion there, so you do not have FU money. Far from it. You're very far away from having FU money. But there is, I think, some merit in trying to get to a situation where you've got an FU mindset. And I don't mean here that you somehow trick yourself into thinking that you've got, FU money, or you can just go into your boss and say FU and you'll be all right, and somehow psychologically convincing yourself of that. I'm talking about something where you literally do have some security, where even if you don't actually do it, you feel as though you've got the confidence to be able to do it should the need arise. Now, one way of doing that is, of course, having FU money in the bank. Well, that's impossible for like 99.9% of people, I would imagine. You can save, yeah, you can do that, but yeah, it might take years, decades. It's not really a viable option for a lot of people. They're already living sort of like hand to mouth already, so there's no wiggle room to save any money. Or, that's not to say that you can't start putting money away. What you've got to think about is, what's the minimum amount of money? Because what you don't want to be thinking here is FU money needs to be so much money that you can like retire and live on it for the rest of your life. That's a different thing. That's that's complete financial independence. I'm not talking about that. It just needs to be enough money, or some of the other things that we'll talk about are other strategies for achieving the same outcome, but enough to give you that feeling that you don't have to put up with this, whatever this is. Whatever situation you're currently experiencing that is providing you some anxiety, giving you some anxiety, worry, dread, whatever. How much money would you need for you to be able to sort of be more comfortable about turning around and walking out? It might not be as much money as you think. You might only need enough money to tide you over for 3 months, because, for example, that there's a contract coming up that you are a shoo-in for, a few weeks down the line, maybe. Or it might be that you're well connected, you've kept up good relationships with colleagues and co-workers, and that, I don't know, maybe it won't take you but 1 month to get back into employment. That's a kind of a fortunate position that you might find yourself in. But again, I think that's probably rare. But other ways of bringing about this FU mindset might be to have a side hustle. This is something that that more and more people are doing, is setting up things on the side where obviously initially you're not going to be able to replace your salary with it, but after working on it for a bit, it might provide you with just enough money for you to be able to say quietly to yourself that should the proverbial hit the fan and you have to, you have to quit, that you'll be okay. That's all you're looking for, really. You're not looking for a retirement amount of money. You're just looking for enough to give you that confidence, that peace of mind, or if not that, then just a reduction in the feelings of anxiety that you might be experiencing. That would be a win. So I want to tell you a bit about what happened with my situation, and then also invite you to share any ideas that you've got. So I was made redundant. I'm looking at my computer screen here. I'm a obsessive note taker. I've got notes going back decades. So I can tell you that I was made redundant from a job way back in, bear with me a sec, let me just find it. Uh, 2015. I should remember that because that's the year I got married. Okay, and it was actually, I got made redundant in September. Well, that was my last day, and I got married to my wife that same month. So the pressure was definitely on. Not the kind of circumstances that you really want to have on your wedding day, really. Where am I going with this? No, I want to go back even further. No, I've made a mistake there. That was another thing. I was initially made redundant it was a couple of years before that. It was actually 2011. Yes, that's when I got married. 2011. Right. It was September I got married, made redundant in the August of 2011. Okay, so I was right about that bit. It was just the date I got confused about. And then started a business. And it was then, I can't describe, well, you put yourself in the business. I'm sure you've got your own situations where, you can relate. It's like being made redundant in the August and then getting married in the September, not brilliant really. And then starting the business in the September, when we got back from our honeymoon, it was straight down to starting this business, working on it throughout 2012, continuing. I got a little bit of a redundancy payout. I can't remember how much it was. I want to say it was £9,000, but don't quote me on that. 2013, working on the business. 2014, still working on the business, trying to grow it, trying to get it off the ground, trying to make it so it provided me with an income. And basically, I think it was right the way up to February of 2014, got offered a full-time job. The full-time job was 30 grand. Where I'd built the business to was an annual income of just less than 18 grand. And that's over several years building it up. You get me? You see, like, it was several years on, like, that's where it ended up. So it didn't go 17 grand straight away. Like, it was 17 grand by the time I got offered the job. So it was like building it up from 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, building it up 2015, no, 2014, that's when I got offered the full-time job. So I took it. Why wouldn't I? Because it was like 30 grand. And it was a bit of a lifeline. And then I started working on this job. Sorry if I'm ranting or going off, if this is boring or whatever. I just want you to, get some background here. And basically, started working for this company where, it didn't go very well. Eventually ended up in this situation where I was stuck in a job. I was kind of like trapped. I'd experienced that like existential dread of, from those years between initially being made redundant and 2014 is catastrophizing about how the hell I'm going to provide for my wife. And by that stage, we had a kid on the way. And so when I was offered the job, great. It was a release from that. It saved me from that, but then it started to go sour. I was basically traveling all up and down the country, delivering training. That was what I did, health and safety training. So I'd go into a new workplace. I'd leave home on the Sunday night, go to this new workplace, deliver the training for them all week, and then go back on the Friday evening. It could be hundreds of miles away. So I wouldn't get back on the Friday evening until very late. And then on the Sunday evening, it would be having to travel. You lose your Sunday basically, because you know that just shortly after lunch, you're going to have to travel to some other godforsaken place to deliver health and safety training. And then every night you'd end up going back on your own to a lonely, I'm not going to say the name of the motel, but a budget, as cheap as possible, budget motel on your own to spend the evening before doing it all over again, Monday through Friday. It was starting to get me down a little bit. I don't think it's much of a way to live your life, to be honest with you. And the company was starting to really kind of make my teeth itch in terms of their, pettiness. I'll give you just an example of the sort of thing that I was having to deal with, and maybe the sort of thing you're having to deal with in your workplace as well. It was basically, we were allowed to, as sort of roving health and safety tutors, we were allowed to go out for an evening meal all on our own. Sit there for an evening meal. You were allowed one alcoholic beverage, and you could put that on expenses. All right, well, I don't want to go out. I was into, health and fitness, and I don't want to go out for a pub meal or anything like that and sit there on my own eating this, god-awful, rubbish that they would, laden with calories. It just, not only from the health and fitness aspect of things, but just from the fact that I don't want to sit there on my own in a restaurant eating. So what I decided to do was basically get myself some, sandwiches or whatever from the convenience store, try and keep it as healthy as I could, and then use I would calculate in my head, well, what would be the meal? What would a meal cost and an alcoholic beverage? What's the difference between what I'm paying here for these like sandwiches and a piece of fruit or whatever? And then I used to spend that money on, treats to take back home with me. I thought, what the hell? And then I'd get pulled up on it, sort of thing. So while I'm out there as a roving sort of health and safety lecturer, back in, not seeing my wife, not seeing, not socialising with anyone, being sort of like isolated in some area of the country I don't even know. While I'm doing all that, back at the head office, they're pouring through my receipts and sort of saying, well, what's he spending? What's he spending the allowance on? You know, and then there's me and my immediate line manager on the phone, two fully grown men arguing about bloody Milky Bars and Skittles or something. Do you know what I mean? And then that is what finally caused me to think, Jesus, I've got to get out. This is just not acceptable for my own level of self-respect. This is not acceptable. So I needed the FU situation, and what I decided to do was resurrect the business, that business that had taken 2011, 2012, 13, 14, nigh on three and a half years to start generating just shy of 18 grand. I decided to resurrect that. So basically I was going back to the situation that I was so thankful for having been saved from it was about 16 to 18 months I lasted in that job before it became unsustainable for me. And I was happy to basically tell them. I didn't tell them to F you. I left amicably. Didn't sort of do anything to impinge my character or anything like that. But in my head, they needed to go. They needed to be sacked. This is the way I think about it. They don't sack me, I sack them. So they were sacked, and I was back to resurrecting this business. Now, what the point I want to try and get across here is the business was no surefire thing. There was no guarantee that it was ever going to generate any more than it managed to generate to that point, which was just shy of 18 grand. So it was still a risk. But the key thing is that having done it already, so when I was initially made redundant way back in 2011, started the business out of necessity because I was pushed. I was made redundant. I had no choice. I was out. And then starting the business out of necessity, although it wasn't, anything that Jeff Bezos would be, turning in his sleep over in terms of the income it generated, just the fact that it was still there, like all the kind of things, I didn't sort of take anything down. The website could be turned back on again. All of the kind of systems that I'd set up for accounting and that type of thing, I could set back up again. The contacts, my client list, they were still there, and I could re-engage with it. And that for me was my FU. That's what gave me the FU mindset. And here's where I want to ask anyone out there whether or not they've got any ideas about other things that can bring about the same mindset, because I'm cognizant of the fact that people are not going to be walking around with, tens of thousands of pounds sat in their bank account just in case they get fed up in their job one day and want to say F you to their manager. But there are other things. So that was my situation. Keen to hear about anybody else's situation or ideas that you've got about how to get this FU mindset in place. So what else? Think about what your threshold is. How much money would you need, or money equivalent? I guess in my case, if we're going to break it down to money, it was 17, 18 grand. That was it wasn't so much as having that capital. I wasn't in a situation where I had 17, 18 grand. It was just that I thought that there was a good chance of being able to start generating that again, because I'd already done it. If I hadn't have already done it, I don't think I would have had the confidence. I wouldn't have been in the FU mindset Do you know what I mean? When things started to go sour when I was doing the health and safety lecturing, the only thing that gave me the FU mindset was the fact that I had started a business before, even if it wasn't a very successful one. So if it's money for you, how much money? And start putting that away. If it's something else, if it's going to be, say for example, what might give you the FU mindset might be a certain confidence on your part that if you were to lose a job, you could get another one fairly easily. Now, I don't know how realistic that is generally, but I certainly know that in some sectors it's easier than others to have that sort of mentality that you can just walk out of one job and into another fairly easily. But again, it might not be all that common. I don't know. What helps with this, by the way, I think, is don't turn down any opportunity for skill development or training. You know, on some of these training courses that I delivered, there'd be people in there that their employer has paid them to be on this training course, and they're moaning because they didn't ask for it. They don't want to do health and safety. They think health and safety is all a pile of rubbish anyway, and that it's a nanny state and all this, and they don't know why they're there and blah blah blah, moaning basically. If your employer sends you on a training course, go. Use any opportunity for skill development. It doesn't have to be an accredited training course or anything like that, but any opportunity you have to increase your skills, I think is worth doing, because that might be something that can help you to get to that FU mindset. And the final thing I want to say is, you might not actually ever do the FU, you might not ever quit your job. But I think just having the confidence, or is confidence the right word? The level of security that you could, not that you ever would, but just that you could, if push came to shove, you could leave here and you'd be okay. Try to get to that situation. Because what I see in a lot of these videos, and I used to hear it on these training courses that I was delivering as well, people just kind of really sort of, expressing a lot of dissatisfaction with their job. It was like really getting them down. Some of them, you could tell they just were miserable there. A lot of people feel like that about their job, to the extent that it's a real problem. Try and get to a place where you've got that FU mindset, you know that you could, just so there's even a little reduction in the level of anxiety that you feel around your work and around your job. Even that would be a win. So I'll leave it there. See you in the next one.